Peace. In the name of Allah, I'm Arbi Muhammad. I pray that everyone is well. Hemsptead family, friends, and believers, welcome to my live session. On the menu today, vegan dirty rice. And the subject is growing up in Hemsptead back in the days, in the mid-70s. I hope everybody's Sunday is well. Today on Sunday, we have the dirty vegan rice. Going to jump right into it. Now, you know, the reason I chose these quick, actually it's quick, vegan dirty rice, but it's not so quick. If you don't have the pre-made soup and that chunky veggie marinara. All right. First, the quick dirty rice, as you know, is just 3 cups of some good sticky rice or long grain rice. Long grain is better. Any, like Uncle Burns converted rice, that's good. Just some jasmine rice. It's sticky, but it's still good. It's going to serve a purpose. For that 3 cups of jasmine rice, I'm going to add nearly a cup with a little water, and I'm going to add a little water while it's in there. This is my veggie mix. Now I made this earlier, and this is a combination of like a thick, chunky marinara sauce that I made for the bean soup, and this is it here. It's about a cup of it, and this is it here. This is about the 2 cups of tomatoes, the puree, or should I say portions, because you're making a bigger pot, you use the portions. This is the basic. I've been cooking with this for the last couple of weeks. It's chopped up fresh plum tomatoes, tomato puree, about a proportion 3-to-1. And before I did that, in this pot, this is a 3-quart soup pot, I sauteed up some zucchini, that's a green squash. A couple of weeks I called it zucchini, the pasta, that's the green squash. Cut into nice fine cubes, because that's the veggie flavor with the onions and the browned vegetables to give it that good roasted flavor. I also have the yellow squash. You see the small portions of this. All this is proportional. These are little portions I made for that one batch. But the yellow squash and the green squash and the carrots are about the same portions. The yellow squash, the green squash, and the onions. I have some jalapeno pepper there, a little garlic, green bell pepper, bigger than that, about to match the onions. And I have my seasoning there. That's my all seasoning there. It's all seasoning, jalapeno, onion, green bell pepper, garlic, carrot, yellow squash, green squash, or you can substitute that for cabbage, but you got to saute it nice and brown, and some butter. I saute that in butter. And I start that off with butter. I put the butter in the pan, and I throw in the onions and the garlic, and then the green zucchini and the green squash, and then the green carrots. And I brown that up nice. I start browning that up nice with the seasonings and the jalapeno. Then, of course, the tomatoes and the puree will stew it together that it deglaze the pot. And the result is this right here. Pot of this. This is the veggie mix. This is the chunky tomato. This is considered like a chunky marinara. It's the basis of the marinara, which I use a lot. That's why I'm doing these, because if you cook this and store it, you can use this in different things. This without the squash is like the bean soup mixture. It's the tomatoes with the onions and the peppers and the carrots. Some people put in celery. I use dried celery. And this is what I use for my pastas without the squash. I use it for my pastas, and I use it for bean soup. And the bean marinara will be more finely chopped for pastas. And this is like a cup of this with a little fluid in there. It's a little liquidy. And I use like anywhere from half a cup to 2/3 a cup of bean soup. This is nice. It's sort of semi-thick bean soup. And I make sure I get a lot of beans in there. Because remember, this is a veggie dirty rice. Some people will cook meat in there? I don't. Put meat on the side. On the side, this is going to take some fish, like some baked whiting, some grilled, a baked red snapper, a nice meaty fish. But this, for vegans, this is the main dish. This is a main veggie dish. That's why it's called dirty rice. I'm going to turn on this fan here low because I'm going to start sparking this up. We're going to start with the rice, okay? I can go on low. I'm going to take some butter. You can use your favorite oil, coconut oil, and olive oil. Most people don't cook with olive oil. They use olive oil for finishing because it's nice and healthy. All right. I'm going to take some butter. It's about a tablespoon of butter. Let that go in there. About a tablespoon of butter. Let that start heating up some. That's about good. Then our rice. Yeah, as soon as that butter starts browning up just a tad. And this is jasmine rice. You could use long grain rice. It doesn't make a difference because this is going to be like in a stew. This rice is going to be in a stew. This is 3 cups of your favorite rice. You can use brown rice. You can use long grain. So it doesn't make a difference if you steam the rice first. Put that all in there. It doesn't make a difference if you steam it. Get that scoop in there. As long as you start stirring this, keep this moving. You know? And if it does start to stick a little to the pan, it's okay. Because once you put in that chunky marinara sauce, the veggie marinara sauce, or the bean soup, it's going to soup it up to like a stew. Yeah, and this is just a minute. I'm just heating this rice up, toasting it up a little with the butter, a little flavor in the rice. It's just plain boiled rice. You don't need all that seasoning. That teaspoon of seasoning is what went in the vegetables with the tomatoes, and the bean soup about the same amount of seasoning, but I had a big bowl of bean soup. This is a 3-quart bowl here, so it's about the same for the soup. And this is just heating up nice and evenly, and it's breaking up more. You saw how sticky that rice was? And sometimes you need sticky rice. Sticky rice and sticky pasta for those good meals where you're separating stuff and you're using the rice to like swap up the food. You're mixing the food in, you know, mainly meats. People who've got chicken and vegetables. You know, this is coming right along. This is starting to separate. Yeah, good. Next, I do some fried rice soon too, with a scrambled egg and some cabbage, shredded cabbage. Next, I'm gonna put in a tomato, and this is that thick marinara type. See, that rice is so sticky. It's the thick marinara sauce that I use for my bean soup, and I use it for different stuff. Y'all see this, how this is mixing in there? It's already deglazing the bottom of the rice. The rice was sticking a little because it's a little starchy. Long grain rice is a little better. I could give you a little tip about long grain rice. Converted rice. You take the dried rice and you put it on a baking sheet and toast it in the oven for till it's like light crispy brown. And that makes rice crisp good. And then you steam that rice. And that's the good separated rice. Just a little oil, and that's just fine. Yeah, and that's heating up fine. Next to bean soup. And this is quick. Look how quick this is. It's not quick because the components take a little while to cook, okay? The components, you have to cook the components. It's quick because I'm showing how to cook every component each week of this, and how you can use these different components, you know, for different meals. That chunky marinara sauce was my bean soup. main ingredient minus the squash. The yellow squash and the green squash. And this is nice, thick soup. Just got to get water. And the water, this is a sticky rice. The water got to be right at the level of the rice. When you pour in this water in here, it should level right at the right there. Because when this is going to evaporate, that sticky rice is going to absorb some of that water, and then we're going to put the top on and let it stew. And it's going to stew. It's going to look a little loose, like a loose rice. You see how loose that looks? It's going to be a nice, dirty type rice as it cools. When you cut it off, and even if you leave the top on, that jasmine rice is going to absorb most of this water. So that water level is good. It's even. The water is about even at the top of the rest of the ingredients. And this is veggie dirty rice. It has so much in here. It's tomato based. You don't have to use that much tomatoes. I love tomatoes. Good for the skin. But however you feel, you could use less tomatoes, and more sauteed vegetables, like cabbage. You could swap the cabbage for that squash in here. Some people use eggplant. They saute up eggplant. They even crisp it up. They put like coating on it, and I don't like the eggplant. It doesn't go with my digestion good. But if you do, you can substitute that for a veggie soup. You need just a little bit more water in here. This is good. Because it looks kind of soupy, but it's going to come to that nice dirty rice consistency as it cools down. When I first scoop it out of here, I'm gonna scoop out a thick part to put it in there to taste it. But this is nice. It's seasoned nice. That jalapeno really brings out the ring in it. And you could use this on a side for like fish or grilled chicken. Fried chicken, I don't think so. Maybe grilled or baked. This is gonna go right here as I start my little discussion on growing up in Hempstead. Because I left off the session before growing up in Hempstead. When my mom first moved to Hempstead, what was that, 61? Hempstead was mainly black. What happened in Hempstead then? Most of Long Island. Black people, we had come up from the South in the 40s and 50s to New York, mainly New York City. What was that, Brooklyn and Harlem? No, it was mainly Harlem. We really dominated Harlem. Then a lot of us from the city were working, saved up money, and we wanted the so-called American dream. We started social climbing, and that social climbing move, we thought, was going to Long Island. Long Island was the suburbs, Levittown, the beaches, all this stuff was racist apartheid waiting for us. Matter of fact, it was more segregated than the South. In the South, we own a lot of the sections we in. Up here, we're segregated and powerless. But down South, when we were sort of like separated, semi-separated, segregated, we owned a lot of stuff. So we were in power, farming. We were farming and everything. So when we came up to New York in the 60s, it was called block busting. It was planners did this. It was not a great migration. It was the great displacement. These realtors, they redlined us. They disenfranchised us, marginalized us. When they would send one person into a white neighborhood out here in Long Island, they called it, the realtors had a term for it, block busting. It's a black person they would send into some scared white neighborhood, all the white people would move. And those realtors would be ready to move those Caucasians to another place where it was they would lose money selling their house, but they would move into what was perceived as a better place simply because we weren't there. Because they associated the ghetto with us, slums and junk with us. So in the 60s, 61, Hempstead was the shopping mecca of Nassau County. Hempstead had the A&S, they had all type of stores attracted to Hempstead. And they were attracting us there for a purpose. we grew in numbers from the 60s all the way to the 70s. By the 70s, Hempstead was all black. And that's when, as I left off last time, 55 Grove, we were there from like 70, I think, to 72. I think it was 70, 72. I was going to Prospect School, whole bunch of friends. All our families that came from the South, and we were sort of associated with each other or came from different parts of the South that were close to each other, we called ourselves family. And in Hempstead, we claimed cousins, aunties, and all that, as long as you were black from the South. So on Grove Street, we had that camaraderie. And I went to Prospect School, beautiful teachers there, black teachers, and they didn't teach us strength. They gave us a Negro education. I remember the book. I remember it well. What's that, the Encyclopedia Britannica? Not the one W. Du Bois wrote. It was another one. It was the old safe Negro encyclopedia. We had the set, encyclopedia set. And it had African kings, a few it had ancient African leaders. They mentioned our royalty from Africa a few times in there. They never mentioned that native black people in America came from the West. A lot of that the Western Hemisphere was peopled by black people from Oceania, Melanesia, Polynesia, Australia, and even India and Arabia. A long time ago. That history was so hidden. The Western Hemisphere was black at one time. It was peopled by black people. And then when the Caucasian, later on, the Red Indian came. Well, we brought the Red Indian over here in exile 15,000 years ago. And then later, the warring Mongolians under Genghis Khan, after them, they came over. They were more warlike. Them and the Indians sort of like mixed together up in North America, in Canada. In Canada, they were the Inuit, the so-called Eskimo. And then in North America, what we call the United States of America, was mainly like tribes with some nations. And the black nations, mainly, we were in the South, Florida, and Texas, Mexico, all the way to California. It was, the South was mainly black, all the way to Mexico, even down to the Amazon. It was mixed with Red Indian, especially from the Amazon and the continental America. So when the Caucasian came, he annihilated us. Every black person he found, he tried to kill. And if we didn't die from his germ warfare, that he tries to say was coincidental smallpox, no, it was if he could have germ warfare, he would put on you. They say, oh, it was coincidental, we killed you by accident. No, you get glee out of killing black people. You targeted black. Look, who are you killing today in America? You ain't killing Latinos. You ain't killing them Indians. I'm talking about Eastern Indians. You're not killing these. Who are you killing? Native black people, Native black Americans from the South. So we had come up here, and there was slavery up in Long Island, in New York, Wall Street. That's where slavery started, the ports. Rhode Island, that was a port. So we were on Long Island enslaved. So after the 60s, in the early 60s, it became attractive up here. So as long as we stayed in designated areas that they had made for us, they had it all pre-planned. We think we were moving there. Those real estate agents were redlining us. It was so crystal clear. They even wrote it in the deeds. So we was in Hempstead. It was mainly black by the 70s, and we started owning things, stores, little businesses, owning homes, and a lot of those bars. We had bars all over Hempstead. Oh, this rice is simmering. Good, good, good. You hear it? Good. Get that a little low. It's simmering, bubbling. About 10 more minutes, that's going to be ready, nice and stewed together. It don't take that long because I'm not cooking the rice in there. All that stuff is pre-cooked, so it's just got to mix together and heat. Now, in the 70s, we were progressing. We were saving up money. We were working, saving up money. We had our own businesses, owned our homes. You get equity in a home. You get to take out a second mortgage on your home. That loan line of equity you could use to invest in something else, which we did. We were expanding. We started collecting things. Stereos, TVs. We had luxury sports cars. Our regular car mainly was a luxury sports car. That's the one we aimed for. And if you were really successful and you really had money, you had a Cadillac. And we considered you rich if you had a Mercedes. Our landlord, Mr. Urquhart, a black man, owned the house we were renting, 57 and 55 Grove. We called him rich. I think he was a real estate agent or a doctor, something like that, because he had the glasses. I always thought he was smart, because he had the glasses and the Mercedes and the nice clothes and stuff. And everybody showed importance to him. Every time he walked around, he was like very important. So that's why I thought he was rich and stuff, because he had that Mercedes. He was successful. He had real estate, I believe it was. So we were living in one of his houses on Grove Street, enjoying a good life. As a child, you know who it was. And let me make an announcement here. I've been talking about the good times back in the days. Not everybody had a good time. Our people, they were putting heroin on us. I remember it. This was right about the time I'm talking about now, when we moved from 55 Grove to 33 East Graham in front of Lincoln Park, or before Lincoln Park was built. I remember a lot of our families, man, even Long Island, opening the family drawer, and I saw the strap. The strap was for the heroin. The strap to tie around your arm, heroin, to put heroin injection to the arm. Some of our families had that. That was in my family, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't noticeable. And but a lot of families had trauma, abuse, beatings. We came from the South. We get beat a lot. When a black man married to a black woman, had a lot of children on a farm, was farming or sharecropping, had a lot of children, those children would help on the farm. Had to keep and maintain that, working for some cracker. Imagine going to work. You're going to get your payment for your money. You worked all year, and some crooked Caucasian, this no good white man in America. He haven't atoned for this. He haven't given us reparations for this. Cheated us. His brother owned the general store. And we took all our year, we borrowed money for maybe equipment, borrowed money maybe for seeds. And at the end of the year, we owed that cracker money. He had put us back in virtual slavery. I'm lucky my great-granddaddy, may Allah be pleased with him, beautiful black man. Doc Miller, he had 13 children. He bought all the C.C. Camp in Montgomery County, Mount Gilead. I don't know how many acres it was, but all 13 of his children, he gave all of them acres of land. He had bought so much land, they said, he sold some to white folks. Some of that land had a pond, had timber, all type of stuff. And I remember my mom saying that he used to grow white peaches. So he was farming, doing very successful, and we're lucky we still have some of that land. Most of us lost that land. They tricked us out of it. Crooked insurance people, crooked landowners, crooked civics, crooked judges, crooked lawyers. They all were working together to take our stuff. We lost 20 million acres of land the last century. On the books they claim it's like 12. Some estimate 18. I say it's about 20. Because all they do is take and steal from us. So that would make you hard. You know what I'm saying? You're being abused. You ain't got no dignity if you didn't fight and counted him right there. If you survive and he got you in that broken state, a lot of us take that out on our families. We abuse the family. If the bigger the family, the more you got to put down that law, the further your arms got to reach, the more rules you got to have, the more odds you got to use. Because what's that saying? You got to give some leeway because strict parents produce sneaky children. And loose parents, liberal parents that don't care, do what you want to do, man, forget it. Children, wow. So it's a balance. And a lot of abuse come from that. A lot of beatings. Them beatings were regular and them beatings were excessive. I remember them beatings and whippings. And so coming up in the 70s in Hemsptead, I heard the stories. Some of us were physically abused. Some of us were sexually abused. raped by your brother, raped by the father, some, in rare instances, your mother back then. Rare. That was rare for women to rape back then, but aunts would molest a child. It was very rare. Today it's very common. It's almost a rite of passage to some of y'all. But back then, an uncle would molest a girl, molest a boy, rape a boy, have sex with them. I remember the rumors. We used to joke about it with saying, oh, look out for Chester Molester. It's like, who's Chester Molester? That was from, I think it was Hustler magazine, some character stuff like that. Well, families had those rumors, and you heard some families, they had family secrets. So everybody didn't grow up with good times. Everybody don't have these memories. Me, all praises due to Allah, I was shielded. And what did we have? Whippings and stuff. Well, we had extended family. Everybody on the block, we knew each other. In some instances, if a man was caught raping a child, man, that's almost a death sentence. That's surely exile. You get ostracized. Rapists and molest, So some of our families went through this. So everybody ain't all, smelling the roses. Some of us gunning roses. Some of us toughen from that. But Allah got you here for you to be better. That trauma, even worse than sexual abuse, psychological abuse. You're told that you're nothing. You're mocked, humiliated. Humiliated on daily. For whatever reason. If you psychologically overcome that, you're a victor. You can go from victim to victor if you apply the right mental energy. You get the right spirit. You dig deep into your soul, and all that trauma and injury you have and experience, you take it and you make the best out of it. Whatever bad happened to you, you make into an experience, a learning, a strengthening. And that's how we overcome that. So some people have that, so they don't have good memories. That was going on too in our communities. But it was nowhere as prevalent as today. Nowhere. It's almost a rite of passage to be, I would estimate about 75%, maybe 65% of our children are sexually abused or experience perversion, sexual perversion. You know what I'm saying? To get turned out in the worst way. So coming up in Hemsptead, we seen it, some of the people, they would abuse the boy, he would be homosexual. And we were mocked in back in the 70s. You would get hit hard if you were homosexual. So you had to hide it. But some of them couldn't hide it. These were our family members. These were our friends. So we had mad respect for family back then. In the 70s. And that's when we moved from 55 Grove to 33 East Graham. All right. Yeah, this is good. And this is Veggie Dirty Rice. I can smell that. It's nice and good. Nice and seasoned good. Just in the bowl, baby. Oh, yeah. See, it's soupy already. Look at the moisture. It left already. That's nice, thick veggie soup. That's good. That's good. This is veggie soup. Yes. You can eat this with, it's going to be piping hot. Now, this got to cool down. I got to let that cool. I'll let that sit there a minute, okay? Jeesh. Thing piping hot. Smell good, though. It smells like it has a little meat in it because of the graviness of the zucchini and the squash and the onions and that garlic, the graviness when I sauteed it, that gives it like that meat type taste. Matter of fact, gravy, we used to eat white bread and gravy sandwiches back in the early 70s, from the time I'm talking about. White gravy, bologna sandwiches, geesh, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But a treat we had? My mom, she used to hook up that fried chicken. She used to buy the chicken wings, especially the wings and the drumsticks. They used to take the chicken and on the eye of the oven with the fire and burn the feathers off. The chicken was different then. And the chicken was skinnier back then. Chicken wasn't as plump as it is now. These are GMO chickens. Franken chickens. That's why they're turning us into grafted beans. We got to go organic. Most of my ingredients are organic. When we moved to East Graham in the 70s, one of the most remarkable things I remember from us from the South, and we had a few black people from the Caribbean, mainly Jamaica. I don't remember Haitian families. It could have been. They were distant from us. A lot of Caribbean immigrants. There weren't no African immigrants in the 70s. It was rare. Mainly for the Caribbean. And in Hempstead, I'm talking about. Hempstead, Long Island. Mainly were from Jamaica or any another West Indian island. And they kept their distance from us, except for Jamaicans. Jamaicans were a little closer to us. And I do remember maybe about 2 or 3, Caribbean families on each couple of blocks in Hempstead. And most back then in the 70s, the children of West Indian immigrants spoke English. They were in our culture, native black culture, so they never mentioned it. We never asked, unless they brought it up or we saw one of their family members that had a hard accent. And we didn't care, because we showed love towards each other. Some of us were very tight, So growing up like that, especially with those black families from the South, we were very tight. And that's something that shaped me. And that's something that holds me together. And that's something that I aim to keep, that extended family. It's powerful. Extended family, back in the early 70s in Hempstead, was a safe haven, man. We as children, for the most part, there were a few abuses. We heard the stories. It was a few. But for the most part, we were protected because we looked out for each other. The families looked out for each other. We were in houses. We weren't all cramped up in these apartments, man, in the projects. People left the projects. Our nature pulled us out of the projects. It wasn't the income because most co-ops are apartments, but with their ownership. They select who they put in co-ops. If you go into Hempstead, it's mainly apartments, while it's rental. It's designed to keep you impoverished. You don't own anything. But in Rockville Center, you barely could find an apartment to rent. Rockville Center, most of those, what's it called, country estates? Your country estates, the brick, 2-3-story apartment buildings, all those are co-op. Why? It's to keep us out. That's from back in segregation. Co-op, you got to go to a board. And they say, we approve you or disapprove you. And you got to fit a certain standard. Well, it was mainly keeping us out. Segregated ass Long Island, yes. In the 80s, Newsday did a report where they proved that Long Island, New York, was more segregated than apartheid South Africa. And I couldn't figure that out. I said, wow, South Africa had the rules. So they had the rules. Over here, it was unwritten rules. Sundown towns. It was subtle and wicked and evil as hell. Over here, they had physical barriers you didn't recognize. It was the parkway would divide a black and a white neighborhood. It would be the train tracks. It would be some bridge, a lake. They had physical barriers. See, over in apartheid, they had to draw the line. You in that area, I'm in this area. But over here, they did it in a sneaky way. It's things on the North Hills, they don't even have sidewalks. There's certain roads that they never extended roads to certain areas on the North Shore, up on the hills and stuff of Long Island, Nassau County and Suffolk, especially in the middle over there. When you go up into them hills, into those very expensive places, they don't have roads. Them roads are they just built them roads recently. They didn't want people they don't want strangers coming down there. They don't want you coming there. They have no sidewalks. They don't want you walking through there. They don't want you visiting through there. And so in these physically segregated places, we were doing for ourselves. They said, okay, you segregate us. We started hustling among ourselves. We had our own businesses. Back in the early 70s, when we moved to 33 East Graham, Lincoln Park wasn't even built. So whatever date that was, I guess that could be a time code for a time marker for when we moved there, because it was the early 70s. And it was beautiful, man. The Hudsons were next door to us. The Fletchers were next door to us on Hudson. Junie and Terry, Diane, Casey lived around the corner from us on Monroe. And was that Hudson or Monroe? Am I getting this wrong? I think it was Hudson. Right next door to 33 East Graham. And there were so many families. There was, who was that? Derek Price, Cynthia White. And these were families, not these children I'm naming. We knew their families. We knew their parents. And me and Junie, we was a little wild. Me and Junie didn't have stable fathers. Our mothers had boyfriends. That reflects. So you don't have a father. And there were other children that didn't have fathers, but they had strong uncles and bigger brothers, much bigger brothers that checked them. They couldn't hang out with us. Them parents used to tell them, them children, they be getting in too much trouble. I remember back in the 70s, we would all get together on our bikes to decide who house we was going to go over. And we said, yeah, let's go over Ronnie house. That was on Angevine. We said, oh, let's go over such and so house. That was near Kennedy Park. And we said, let's go over Orb house. And Howie'd be like, we ain't going over there. Orb be getting it. I should get them whippings for acting up, stealing, lying, you know. And that didn't happen through no vacuum. That happened through modeling. I looked around and modeled what I saw, doing sneaky stuff. Doing a little, you know, we were poor, yet collecting things. But when you have a family with extended family and other family members and your neighbors have better things, you want better things. So you want those things. Say, can I have that? Say, no. Why? Because your parent ain't explained it to you fully. You think you're being punished somehow. But you ain't got the money to pay for that. You know, let them, most parents be like, let them waste their money on that. I'm investing this money. And damn sure, our parents were very, very frugal and saving up money. That's why we started collecting things. Don't you know, our parents used to go to the supermarket when they buy something. They would get them green stamps. Every time they bought something, they would save them green stamps up and get like a sewing machine or something or iron or something simple. They would save up for that. They would keep it in an album. They all had bank accounts. I remember bank book in the early 70s. I remember that. My mom, she bought all of us bank accounts. Well, she set up bank accounts for us. We all had the little bank book. And we learned that we had that little money. And they had layaway, and they had a whole bunch of stores in Hempstead back then. I think it was Grant's, Learners, I think it was Lane Bryant. I don't remember. It was so many stores in Hempstead. They came and went. They were keeping us destabilized. But we were frugal, and our families, they would save up stuff. And people would pass things on. So if you got something that was passed on or something cheap, back then they only had a few pair of sneakers. They had them maybe across the country. In the early 70s, when I was a child, just learning things, they had about 7 major brand of sneakers, I think. And I think the main ones I remember was Pro Kids and the Chuck Taylors, and there was a few others. But most of the ones that you would buy were Skips. And if you wore Skips to school, you would get checked. You would get teased about it. So we didn't want Skips. We wanted better things. So, yeah, that's right. It was only about 7 pairs. They had a different style of shoes, but major brand sneakers that we wore as status, it was only a handful. So the materialism was simple as a child. So sneaking to get things, they had different candies. We wanted different toys. And we would sneak each other toys from the other children. We would borrow each other toys. Some of us would steal them. Some of us would borrow them. And some of us would play with each other. Most of the time, we played with each other. Most of the time, you didn't have to share your toy to give it to your neighbor. We would be playing with each other in the yard. You know? So we had things, but we didn't have the most. But we had the little things, and we were growing. And a child don't understand that. All we know is that they got the better things. That's that materialism. That materialism will bring out something in you. Either you're going to say, look, let me go pack bags at the grocery store, or let me go do some newspaper routes, which me and Junie did, because we wanted better things. So that sort of kept us out of trouble. But me and Junie, we were very active. We were all over the place. And we would neighbors upstairs and downstairs at 55 Grove. So we moved together from 55 Grove to 33 East Graham in Hudson Street, right across from Lincoln Park. Let me taste this dirty veggie rice. Okay. See, the moisture has gone out. Remember that water layer? It's nice and moist. Let me just take another bite. Still hot. It's a nice veggie rice. It's nice and wholesome. That's a composite. That's a rice that got body to it. That dirty rice. Next time I'll make some broiled fish with it, or grilled fish. Excuse me. And we didn't have this type. I think we had rice-a-roni rice. That was the closest thing to dirty rice. But next week I'll continue with the 70s